Pero seriously, you will appreciate the problem tree once you start crafting theory of change and solutions tree. Okay.
Okay po, sir. Good afternoon, guys, and good afternoon, sir. So we're group 2. So we're here to discuss yung scale disinformation problem from our group's viewpoints and research process since yesterday. So today po, yung magde-discuss po from our group would be Zaira, Concepcion, and Philip Custodio on behalf of our group. So next slide po namin is we already captured the problem P. So pag makikita po dito, from the downside of the roots is the immediate and secondary and basic cause, and upwards to the branches is the immediate effects and secondary effects. So guys, Zaira and Philip, take it away.
For the first immediate effect, we have the damaged educational curriculum system. It says there that students would not be able to acquire a solid education that is based on facts and real incidents and explains how past events have affected the present. I will say the whole effect first before explaining.
Sure.
The secondary effect is the historical revisionism and negationism. This is the alteration of factual information and or belief. And for the other secondary effect is the students are misinformed about history and educational knowledge. This is the distortion of understanding, knowledge, memories, and information. And due to the said factors, it is evident that students are heavily affected by the system. An article from Rappler states that there has been backlogs in terms of facilities and that compensation is also lacking among teachers. Students would not be able to acquire an adequate education that is based on facts and real incidents, and one that explains how previous events have connected to the present. If this continues to persist, historical revisionism and negationism may continue to exist. This is due to the fact that there could be alteration of what they know. An article by Magsambol during 2022 shared that due to the crisis in the educational system, students have become easier to target to fall in disinformation, most especially in this distance learning setup. A social studies teacher, Danilo Lumabs, once predicted that there will be a great number of more examples of his pupils spreading falsehoods online. The advent of remote learning has made it challenging for instructors like him to effectively advise their students since they cannot physically interact with the pupils. It was because students tried favoring the Marcos family, immersing themselves into fake news that have become known. Thus, students are misinformed about history and educational knowledge.
Wait lang, Philip. Just to add lang din po when it comes to the logical path of the effects from damaged educational curriculum system up to the student are misinformed about history, educational knowledge. So basically po, ang isang example po dyan is yung damage, it will be discussed through the causes of lack of proper education system. An example for a damaged curriculum system, which is yung currently the curriculum base of DepEd. And secondly, it follows to historical revisionism. Kung nababalitaan niyo po on recent news, there's already been tampered of misleading and false information about the history context on the subject of Araling Palipunan tungkol po sa panahon ng martial law. So there's already been very glaring evidence that there is already little bits of historical revisionism when it comes to the curriculum of history context to martial law during what happened on martial law. So kung susunod, papasok na po dyan, sir, yung students are misinformed and about history and educational knowledge. So basically po, also because given the fact that students will become future voters of our country, and this will have an impact in their future application in a decision-making process, such as the glaring evidence of elections. So, sige, thank you.
Yeah, excellent. Kasi ako, ang na-appreciate ko, pati yung problema ng education, na-associate nyo na sa disinformation. Ibig sabihin, hindi lang sa social media, ha? Key yun, ha? The disinformation has started from social media, but it's even affecting institutions.
For the second immediate effect is fake news on social media platforms. This might influence people's opinions, assumptions, and comprehension. For the secondary effect, rather, is the spread and distort of information. Platforms for harmful conspiracy theories and hate speech platforms, due to their false beliefs, has an impact on the population, and that this information can occasionally originate in the media and spread through social media platforms. For the other secondary effect is distrust of credibility and accuracy of social networking apps. When people start to learn to fact check and cite from credible sources, people begin to doubt and be skeptical about the legitimacy and credibility of possible sources. Given these examples, fake news on social media platforms might influence people's opinions, assumptions, and comprehension. It's even the reason why there is a spread and distort of information. This shows that platforms for harmful conspiracy theories and hate speech platforms, due to their false beliefs, have an impact on the population. This information can occasionally originate in the media and spread through social media platforms. Due to their false beliefs, it has an impact on the population. One example is the fact that the majority of respondents to a study conducted by Rappler said that they have been utilizing social media more often as a direct result of the outbreak. Since the pandemic began, the majority of respondents said that they had been spending more than 4 hours per day on social media. Only 18% of respondents said that they had previously been spending the same amount of time on social media before the outbreak began. Therefore, it shows how the people easily succumb to fake news because of usage of the platforms. When people start to learn to fact check and cite from credible sources, people begin to doubt and be skeptical about the legitimacy and credibility of possible authentic social media sources.
Galing. All right.
For the third immediate effect is the alteration of factual information and beliefs. Due to the fact that many individuals do not have sufficient knowledge on a certain subject, they are more likely to trust inaccurate articles and videos that are shared on the internet when erroneous information is spread there. Since it is the initial data that is acquired on a certain subject, the erroneous information is internalized and used to build the foundation and skeleton of subsequent information. Because of this, the erroneous information is mistaken for facts. For example, Eusebio during 2022 shared that since the information about the individual claims that received the most interactions, myths about the war between Russia and Ukraine occupied the top 2 slots, with the most popular claim receiving more than 8.7 million aggregate interactions. Following that was a pair of medical claims, and it's noteworthy to note that neither one of these was directly associated with the COVID-19 pandemic. This only showcases that since information is not entirely accessible, the tendency to succumb to fake news becomes evident.
Agree. Agree. I so agree.
And for the last immediate effect, this is the altering of psychological condition, with the secondary effects being the distortion of knowledge, comprehension, memories, and information. According to the research of Dr. Helen Boyes and her fellow psychologists and cognitive scientists, this information, particularly lies, have a tendency to alter a person's memory and knowledge. The research tells us that when lies are repeatedly told, we unconsciously start believing them and accept them as truths. When false information is received by people who lack knowledge on certain topics, these gathered false information become the foundation of future knowledge, causing a faulty mindset towards something. One of the most notable examples was the Golden Era, which were one of the myths among the Marcoses. Due to the memories brought by martial law, information perception is affected. The assertion that the Philippines was the second richest nation in the world after Japan under the Marcos administration was published on the Facebook page to 30 Media Network in March 2020. The page pretended to be a professional media source and gave the impression that it was a credible news organization. Fact checkers at AFP interviewed economic specialists who agreed that the statistics from the Marcos administration revealed a drastically different picture of the economy. As a result of this, as a result of the dictator's leadership, the Philippine gross domestic product actually fell from fifth in Asia at the beginning of the dictator's administration to sixth in Asia by the year 1985. During this time, the nation was mired in a protracted recession. Thus, when contradictory information that seems more believable and is easier to understand is compared to old data that seems complicated, our mindset and knowledge tends to be distorted by this newly published false information.
Yeah, agree.
Okay, thank you, Philip, for enlightening us with the effects of scale disinformation. So let's move forward with the causes. So,
Can I just ask a question? I noticed that the branches are, you also have horizontal connections. Can you share a little bit to the group why you put those horizontal connections? Or is that,
Sure.
go ahead, Kiefer.
On regards of the design of the problem, we thought we have discussed also within our creatives team last night na parang we discussed to have a connection when it comes to yung lining po. Kasi sir, all of them leads to the middle of the thing, which is skill disinformation. And
Oh,
also
so,
sir, parang sir may sige po.
siguro, pero meron ka pa rin, ito naintindihan ko, kaya meron ka nito, para connected siya. Pero dito sa second level, meron ka pa ring line, yung secondary effects. Ito pala, ito. I'm using this. Ito, nakikita ba? Dali. Let me turn on the annotation.
Sige po sir.
Dali. How do you turn on annotation? Hindi pala, ako yung dapat mag-on ang annotation kasi hindi ako yung nagsishare. Ay, naka-off yung annotation. You see, di ba nakita mo yung horizontal line? Maliit, manipis na
Apo, sir.
manipis. You have two of those. Can you explain bakit meron din yung pangalawa?
Yung second layer po sir, yung sa secondary cost po. Sir, kasi po we discussed it na parang medyo functional yung pagkaintindi po. Tsaka sir, they're totally separate when it comes to the alignment of yung logical parallelism of the immediate.
Yung vertical, totally separate. Pero yung horizontal, what is that trying to say?
Totally separate din po. When it comes to lang po sir, dinikit-dikit na lang po namin para sir mas maintindihan po at klaro na they belong for this secondary layer, they all are secondary causes. Tapos sa baba po sir, they're all basic causes.
Okay, sige. So divider lang yun. Okay, sige.
Ako divider lang po, yes po.
Okay, sige. Please continue. Thank you.
okay, for the first immediate cause, we have the lack of proper education system. So this then showcases that scale disinformation continuously exists because of varying concepts that affect the education system. As we all know, people who lack education are those who have a below average level of common understanding of fundamental concepts that they would need on a daily basis. Yet, they could not entirely be blamed as they're only recipients of the circumstance in the society. For the secondary cause, we have the inadequate government education system. It is then caused by the DepEd is the name of the government agency in the Philippines that oversees the country's educational system. Lacks a high quality system that effectively handles the issues facing the nation's educational sector compared to basic education where public funding has decreased since 2018. Spending on infrastructure and defense has increased. Additionally, basic education claims that local governments have not been using their education resources efficiently. Actually, only 67.8% of the special educational fund was utilized on average in 2020. And then for the basic costs, we have the poor government leadership prioritization. So Vice President Sara Duterte serves as the Department of Education's current secretary in the Philippines, a government representative without any experience in the field of education. Vice presidential candidate Sara Duterte would make her priorities during the campaign for the national elections in 2022. One of the most important things she wants to pursue after becoming office is yung mandatory ROTC. Her administration focused on obtaining 150 million in confidential funds rather than concentrating on the nation's actual educational crisis. And the SPED received no funding from the national budget. With this being said, the impact may affect the scale disinformation, and it has a large tendency to affect us citizens. And then
Excellent.
for the second immediate cause po, we have the cognitive biases, wherein it is a trait of human psychology that affects how beliefs are formed. So cognitive biases have always been one of the key traits that affect the perception of the news. For example, focusing on clickbaits and headlines affect the view. The secondary causes are the confirmation bias and the false consensus effect. So for the confirmation bias, people have this tendency to process information by looking for or interpreting information that is consistent with one's existing beliefs. So an example that could be the case is former VP Lenny Robredo, given the fact that her image was painted as lutang and bobo. Some of the supporters of the current president, BBM, focus on supporting him while interpreting Lenny's action as a form of katangahan. So meanwhile, false consensus effect overestimates naman po the normality of their opinions and beliefs. So this leads to the perception that there is a consensus in which people agree with the individual question, and this consensus does not exist. So this then applies to the said supporters, such as how trolls would have judgments to which the people who will vote for former VP Lenny are expected to be dumb and are inappropriate based on the narrative established by the other camps. And then for the third immediate causes, we have the ulterior motive on disseminating false information. So here, this is because of the fact that propaganda exists with the intent to share false information. So someone who operates covertly and with a concealed agenda in order to further their own interest, in order to specifically exploit false information. So many people with ulterior motives have distributed false information in both public and digital spheres. So yung example po is yung Thinking Pinoy, if alam niyo po yun sa FB po. Like nagpo-post po sila ng mga maling information about politics, ganun po. So next po is the low income driven actions. So many of the trolls and fake accounts that disseminate false informations are hired and paid astronomical sums of money to do so. So this kind of deal typically occurs during an election. So when one candidate pays trolls to spread false information about another to undermine their credibility. So yung for example po dito is yung sa Russia, there is a service called Disinformation for Hire that offers services to publish what appear to be actual articles on a variety of websites and then share links to them via networks of fake social media accounts. So an article by CNA shared that the practice of trolling has become profitable for more than a few Filipinos, and it kicked into high gear in preparation for the elections in the Philippines this year. So the television show Undercover Asia was able to acquire access to shadowy networks that propagate misinformation on behalf of politicians. And then for the basic cost, we have the socioeconomic status. So it analyzes how economic growth influences and changes social processes. So when a country experiences an economic downturn, it affects relevant information and causes advancement. Thus, as paid trolls, it helps in improving income for them, but they have to sway public opinion through public discourse. And then for the last immediate causes, we have the social media platforms are unstructured and lack policies for its platforms. So in the Philippines, there are no strict laws and reforms. So many social media platforms are irresponsible and lack policies, rules, and regulations that control and suppress the information that circulates online. So many of these problems are usually profit-oriented and do not care what its users post online as long as there is interaction. So this aids in the sporadic effect of disinformation. Thus, it is also saddening that yung Facebook sites po are filled with blogs backed by unsupported data and are even a place for trolling. And then for the secondary cause, the trolls, individuals who are irresponsible on media sites such as trolls and fake accounts. So trolls and fake accounts are made by individuals who create several social media profiles and then use those accounts to propagate false information. This might create the impression that a bogus story is real due to the way it appears to have spread. False social media posts and accounts contribute to the spread of false information. And then the last one is the basic cost, which is the posting and publication feeds to, I can see it. Pero yun pa. The basic cost then lies with how these platforms become a hotspot infestation for harmful conspiracy theories and hate speech that spread malicious information that manipulates people's ideologies. So ang example po na pwede ano dito is yung COVID-19 mass disinformation incident back in 2020. It was saddening because there are many conspiracy theories, one of which is the fact that doctors only made COVID-19, and at the same time, yung drinking daw po ng gin also helps in alleviating suffering. So these are some of the cases that even contribute to the false information through adverse impacts. It generally affects the people. So that's all for our presentation.
Galing, Zaira. Can you go back, please? Galing, congratulations. Also very, very good. I have a question. No, ang question ko would be, there are some. First is sorry. Before I ask a question, can I solicit questions from the other groups?
Sure, go ahead with your question.
Yung una, part of by the way, maganda yung relation ng bawat root causes. Pareho din ng previous group, but my question really is, if you're going to create a strategy, where will you position, for example, your strategy among all these causes? Kiefer or the other groups or the other members? One of the tests is kasi you need to be able to scope causes that is reversible, that can create gains. Go ahead, Kiefer.
Sir, if we're gonna look at it in the strategic standpoint, if it can be reversible, I think, sir, on behalf of our group, when
Or
we
mitigated,
have
mitigated or reversible. Go ahead.
yes, po, sir. Like you said, po, sir, about our lessons when it comes to social inequity, it is reversible. When we have researched these causes and effects, the causes specifically, we have searched that most likely with the research process when we discuss the change of when we conduct the change of the model of theory, a change of theory, and the solution tree. I think we could solicit and find a reversible solution when it comes to those immediate causes and basic secondary and basic causes.
Wala pa tayo doon, pero right off the bat, dito lang, unang tingin, saan mo nakikita ang pwede i-position yung strategy?
Sir, to standard posters, sir will start on the educational sector from the education system.
So dito sa kaliwa, here on the left.
Apo, sir. Yes, po, sir. That's
So
right,
for
sir.
example, in an inadequate government system, you're saying that if the government develops a media literacy, for example, as part of the education system, it will have some gain.
Yes po, sir. Kasi po, sir, based
Yeah,
on
yeah.
based on my research din po also, sir. Specifically, the Department of Education doesn't have any subjects of media information literacy from the grade school level and to the junior high school level.
Yeah.
Kaya po, sir, tendency po dun, sir, yung effects po niya, nagkakumpo ng damage of curricular system when it comes to being an effect of scale disinformation po.
Okay. Yung bang kanilang media literacy looks at root causes of disinformation o hindi?
Sir, paulit po.
Does their media literacy looks at root causes of disinformation o hindi? Yung high school kamo meron, di ba? Ang kulang is grade grade 1 to
Yes po, sir. Elementary from high school. Pero sir, pag senior high school student, 3 to 12, meron po silang subject of media information literacy. Pero sir, when it comes to from grade 10 to grade 1, basic education lang po yung nakukuha po ng mga estudyante po when it comes to the policies of that.
So, ibig sabihin, sa basic education, kailangan ng some sort of education to help fight disinformation. Yung second question ko is, dun ba sa high school, ang media information literacy, do they discuss the root causes of disinformation o hindi?
Sir, when it comes to in my basic knowledge na po experience of media information subjects, ay hindi po siya na-discuss yung root cause of disinformation. Pero po, sir, they study and analyze on how to properly gain information to the digital and media sphere po, sir. Pero yun nga lang po, sir, hindi po nagkakaroon
so ano sila, parang fact-checking?
Yes po, parang more of promotion and advocating po, sir, when it comes to policies po.
Pero mangyayari doon, tactical yun. Hindi ka magiging strategic pag di mo tinignan yung root cause.
Yes po, sir.
Okay, sige. So, ganun pa rin, even sa high school, pwede pa rin ma-reform. Sige, that's very important. That's just one example of why I'm asking a question. When you start crafting your causes, you need to also scope problems where you can align solutions. Kasi kapag yung problem sa ini-scope mo, walang alignment, ibig sabihin you're not able to develop a handle. So you also might want to also craft your root causes where a solution can be established. In some cases, also, solutions can address two root causes. For example, proper education system can actually address cognitive biases. Okay? Maraming root causes dito tatamaan na ng tamang media disinformation, media information or media literacy or proper media literacy. Okay? How about others? Can you guys ask questions as well? Very good. Congratulations to the group and Kiefer. Level up na nga itong grupo na to. Lumalaban kina Jane. Si Hanali pinagtatawanan pa rin kay Kiefer, hindi pa rin daw. Tingnan mo yung emoticon ni Hanali.
Ay, sorry, sir. Sir, no, that's not what I meant. I mean,
Okay. Akala ko pinagtatawanan mo naman,
Sir,
Hanali talaga.
Sir, disinformation yan. Then, joke lang.
Okay,
Sir,
sige.
I'm
just joking.
I'm laughing because the
I am just giving you a hard
co-innovation.
time. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Disinformation nga lang yun. Okay, Maso.
Sir, love ko sila Kiefer.
Okay. Gumagawa lang ako ng gulo. Nantutroll lang ako. Sige. Maso.
I'd like to, well, yung sinabi mo kanina, sir, why are they connected, di ba po, sa secondary effects at saka secondary causes and basic causes? They're interconnected, sir. I would reason out that my reasoning was that they are interconnected. They're not
They are
interdependent,
actually.
but they are interconnected, right?
Actually, yeah.
So in the
They are.
di ba? So the
Kaya lang
secondary
tinatanong ko
causes.
kung intention yun sa pagtalagay ng
Oh,
linya.
okay, yeah. Yun na. I thought it was intentional because
Remember,
it's
the whole thing is an ecosystem. That's why they call it a complex problem. The first part of complexity, which I will share later, is the systemic part. Ibig sabihin, hindi lang siya isang root cause. Multiple root causes siya that are interrelated. And in some cases, one root cause feeds the other. And
Yes.
the interrelation is also very critical. And
Yes.
fishbone naman yun, fishbone analysis yun. Okay?
Thank you, sir.
Good observation.